What is up, guys? This is Tcg Sam here, and in today's video I got a tier list for some very common going second cards that are usually seen in the side deck or main deck if you're doing a going second deck. Just remember, before we begin, this is just my opinion and my opinion only. As with all tier lists, you are free to disagree. This is just based on my experience with the cards and my experience playing against them. But before we begin, I just want to ask you guys to please remember, if you haven't already, leave a like, comment, subscribe, because it really helps keep me motivated to keep posting more videos like this. But without any further ado, let's just hop straight in. So the first card is Anti-Magic Arrows. I want to put the cards on the screen in case you guys don't know what they do. But Anti-Magic Arrows is really nice. It kind of acts as a pseudo-red reboot in a way, because it prevents your opponent from using spells or traps for the rest of the turn. And the thing is, it's spells and traps. So against a deck like Sky Strikers, their spells are turned off too, and which is just really nice, in addition to like trap decks that you use to normally stop it. The thing is, with this card though, is you do have to go into the battle phase, which is kind of like evenly matched in that sort of sense. But the other bad thing is you can't use spells or traps for the rest of the turn too. So your deck has to be very monster heavy and can play with only their monsters. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it in like very format dependent. Like, it's just above niche, because I feel like there are just enough decks that can play it. Like Emancipator Prankets, I feel like can play. It's like probably the best example of a deck that can play this. Any monster heavy like combo deck can probably play it. And the reason why I also think it's so good is because you can't respond to it, so your opponent can't even judgment it, which is just absolutely incredible. I guess against good players, they'll flip their spells and traps like in the main phase when you try to go battle phase, if they're trying to play around this, which is the other thing too. It's not like evenly where people will be like, okay, I'll let you go battle phase and I'll activate the stuff in the battle phase, because now they don't have a chance to activate it if you just slam down the anti-magic arrows. So for that reason, put it in format dependent, but I still think it's a very good card that a lot of people might underlook. Next up is Dark Ruler No More. Dark Ruler obviously is very good against most of the combo decks right now. Against Drytrons, if you Dark Ruler their Herald of Perfection, or their Herald of whatever Herald ritual they have, or the Vandy's Ruler, then you're only dealing with at most 2 Herald of Orange Light, which is still pretty decent, because that's 2 PSY-Framegear Gammas pretty much. But Dark Ruler No More can also just completely like just break some boards right now. I guess other than Virtual Worlds, you can break boards from like Emancipator Prankets, which is on the rise. You can break boards from like other combo decks where they just put a bunch of monsters on the board, like Savage against Dragon Link, for example. The most interaction they're going to have against you at that point should just be some hand traps and the Dragon Maid trap if they play it. So for that reason, I feel like this is definitely a must side in this format. And in the future, once VFD goes, I feel like this is even more of a must side, because like the only reason this isn't good against VFD is they can just use it before VFD. In my opinion, at the very least, I feel like it's a must side if you're playing, if your deck can put it in the side deck. Next up is Denko Sekka. This card is really nice because it just completely locks down your opponent's whole back row. The reason I like these types of blanket effect cards, like you might realize, I really like these blanket effect cards like Dark Ruler, Anti-Magic Arrows, because they don't only affect one card, they completely lock out like a whole mechanic. So this completely locks out your opponent's spells and traps. But the problem with Denko is it does take up your normal summon, since it can't be specialed, and like that means your deck can't really rely on its normal summon. But Denko, the thing with Denko is it can also, it's also like susceptible to like monster negation. It's also susceptible to like negation on the board, if you know what I mean. And like it's probably not going to stick on the field past one turn, because it's only 1700 attacks. So while it's a pretty nice card, like I would say it's very decent, it's just the only problem with it is just not enough decks to play it, as far as I know, because a lot of other times you rather just allocate the spells and trap removal to your spells and traps, like Evenly or Anti-Magic Arrows or Feather Duster at that point. So I feel like Denko is very niche, but there's some decks that can utilize it very well, and you guys definitely gotta be careful with Denko. Next up is Forbidden Droplets. This card is really nice because it can theoretically stop a card like VFD if they don't have Chuchi face up, or if you're able to send a trap card off of this, then Chuchi can't respond to it. So this is the nice thing against VFD, because VFD can't really be stopped by much else. Like I guess there's Gamma and maybe Impermanent Chalice, I guess, but Droplets is just the best one because it also works against like every other deck in the meta right now. Against Drytrons, you can negate their Herald or Vandy's Ruler. Against Virtual World, you can negate their BFD. Against the Lyralist deck, I believe you can negate their Barrier Statue because it doesn't target, so the Smorgling doesn't protect it. But the only problem with this is you are kind of giving up a lot of resources, so your deck has to have stuff that does things in the graveyard if you're going to be sending it off with droplets. But I think droplets can definitely be in the must side because this is actually really good in my opinion. You can also even main deck. Some people are even main decking it. This is like your main deck out to like those Floodgate Monsters, like Inspector Border, which is getting more popular, stuff like that. Against VFD, like all the stuff I mentioned before, droplets can just be pretty good. Next up is Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched used to be a huge blowout like back in the day when I believe Judgment was still at 1. There's like pretty much no way to play around this unless you just flip all your stuff right away, and then your opponent would just sometimes just not have it and just go main phase 2. That's the thing with Evenly Matched. There's a lot of mind games involved with it, which I do like. But the thing with Evenly is you do have to give up your battle phase, so you're not able to kill them that turn, meaning you have to set up a board yourself. You have to ensure that you set up a board yourself, otherwise, Evenly, like, while it can be good otherwise, like, I just feel like you definitely have to capitalize on it with the, with your own deck. Like, you're gonna be able to set up a board yourself. You have to ensure that you're able to do that. So for that reason, I'm putting in format dependent. It's like, it's also not really good in some formats too, because in like a combo format, like going to wasting your battle phase, just bait out and negate doesn't seem that good. So for that reason, I'm putting in format dependent. And a lot of stuff's chainable this day, so it makes it even a little worse, but Evenly can still be a huge blowout. Next up is Harpy's Feather Duster. Harpy's Feather Duster is just so good. Like, you just wipe your opponent's back row. There's really no like downside to it. I think it's pretty obvious and it's in the must side. Like, it's just a huge blowout against your opponent. Really not much more to say about that. Next up is Kaiju's. I just put all the Kaijus in the Gamma Seal. So the thing about Kaiju's is it's very good against like Masterpiece-esque decks. So like, of course, back when Masterpiece was a thing, Kaiju's were really good. Back when, I guess, people were using Waken the Dragon still to summon out Ultimate Falcon, it'd be good. It's also like decent against strikers because you just lock up their main monster zone. But like nowadays, strikers don't play like that. They play differently. I'm not really too sure what Kaiju's could be super good against this format. Like, it's always essentially a 1-for-1 trade. You're getting rid of one of your cards from one of your opponent's negates, and that can be huge if you're slapping it down over like a Herald or Appaloosa with like multiple negates. So Kaiju's are honestly like always like, keep in mind that their Kaiju's are a thing. So this is also why that people usually shotgun VFD to play around Kaiju's and Dark Rulers. So just keep that in mind. For that reason, I have to put in format dependent. Some formats is just really nice though. Against like Cosmos and stuff, you just out their ships and whatever. So that could have been really good. Next up is Gamma. You can notice I didn't put any other hand traps on here because I count Gamma as a specifically going second card in addition to its role as a hand trap, because it's able to protect your stuff. Going second, it's able to negate VFD when you're going second. So it's just really nice, and it gets you 2 bodies when you activate it on your turn, allowing you to go into more link plays or something. So I think Gamma is definitely in the must side tier. Like, this Gamma is also, of course, like I mentioned, a very good hand trap when you need to go second, because it can completely just end someone's turn. The only bad thing about it, obviously, is you do have to play the Siphon Driver, which is just a little unfortunate. Next up is Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm is very similar to Harpy's Feather Duster in that it completely just blow your opponent out of all their spells and traps. It's just really nice. It's just a lot more restrictive than Harpy's Feather Duster, but it also has the additional ability to just nuke your opponent's board just like Raigeki does. So I think that for that reason, Lightning Storm, I would say most decks are able to play it too. So I'm gonna put it in like very low must side. So like, this is probably like the last card you put in your side deck if you have like three spaces, in my opinion, in this format, because like you just have ways to out back row already in like Cosmic Cyclone, Evenly, Feather Duster, stuff like that. You know what, I'm actually just gonna put it in like format dependent, because like it really is dependent on the deck you're playing too. I should have named this category format/deck dependent. I'll just do that right now. Because it really does depend on the deck you're playing. You have to control no cards, so you have to use it as pretty much as soon as you go second, meaning you have to draw on your 6-card hand. So for that reason, it's a little bit not just under the must side, but it's still a very, very powerful card. Next up is Mystic. Is Mind Control, excuse me. Mind Control is obviously at 1, so you're not really gonna see it that often. But when you do see it, it's all right nowadays because you can take something and link it off. But the problem nowadays is no matter what you're taking, it's pretty much either gonna be negating the Mind Control or its effects are already gonna be applied. What I mean by that is if you take a VFD, VFD is already gonna be calling an attribute. If you try to take a Herald, they're going to negate it. You can't really target the Wind Barrier statue too because of the Simorg link. So yeah, Mind Control I feel like it's just too niche this format. It used to be really, really good in like a control format like when Salamangreat was running around. Mind Control was so nice. You just take your opponent's Sunlight Wolf, link it to your own Sunlight Wolf or whatever, and like you're just so far ahead by then. But unfortunately, this format is just way too niche. Next up, I'm going to actually add a row below and just put. I'm just put this card in here. I absolutely hate this card. Like I know it's good. I know it's good, but I just personally have a vendetta against this card. I absolutely despise it, and yes, I know I'm biased against it, but I just really wish this card would go because it just facilitates like very uninteractive, unfun gameplay. Stuff like Inspector Border, Fossil Dyna, like stuff like that. Like I just don't like those. I'd rather play against, like, I guess I would rather play against Floodgates, even though they're pretty much just as bad as this, but I'm just put it down here. It is a good card though. I would, like, if I wasn't so biased, I'd put it in like format dependent because it really does depend on the format. Obviously, it's only good against combo decks. Next up is Dinowrestler Pankratops. Pankratops is at 1 too, but I feel like this one is also starting to fall off in popularity a little bit just because against the top decks right now, it's a 1-for-1 trade at most. But the thing is, it's really not that good to anymore because it can't really maintain board presence on the board. If what I mean is you have to use this effect right away to pop something pretty much. Because against like Virtual World, like you just sit on the board and like I feel like it doesn't really do much. Against Drytron, same thing. You can't. It's difficult to trade with their boss monsters. So I'll put it in like it's very format dependent, but of course it still is quite a decent card, and it is at 1 for a reason. Next up is Raigeki. Raigeki is pretty decent only against like the Zodiac deck in my opinion because they're ending on like Zeus or they're ending on Trident and a bunch of Dogmatica cards on the board. I feel like Raigeki's okay then, but otherwise it just doesn't seem that good because like what other deck are you realistically going to be able to Raigeki and just set back so far? I suppose against Virtual Worlds, you can Raigeki their double VFD or whatever, but they have follow-ups in Shen and GG adding back Lulu or whatever, so I feel like Raigeki in that case just really isn't super good. So I'm putting it in the niche tier. It could possibly be good if like just only zoos were running around, like back in zoo format, if you guys remember. Just Raigeki Dark Hole board wipes were just so good back then, but now it's just a little too niche. Next up is Red Reboot. Red Reboot, I love this card. It's just a shame they had to put it to 1 because I feel like this was the answer we needed against trap decks for combo players. Yeah, I am a combo player for the most part, so I'm a little biased towards this, but I really do feel like Red Reboot was a necessary check for those trap decks. The fact that you just activate it as a counter trap from your hand to pretty much lock down all your opponent's trap cards for the turn was just so nice. I think it's definitely still a must side if you're playing a combo deck. Even though it's at 1, the fact when you draw it, it should just be such a blowout that you're just winning the game from there. So for that reason, I think this is definitely a must side. Next up is Super Polymerization. Super Poly, in this format, if you're not playing specifically a fusion deck like Shadal's, you're pretty much only going to be going to Starving Venom to fuse away your opponent's Dragoon and Anaconda. And like while that can be good because it's an Ultra Dragoon, I guess most of the other decks right now, you pretty much have to be playing a fusion deck already, like specifically like Shadal's, to be able to take advantage of this card to its fullest, because there aren't that many generic targets that really are encompassed in the meta right now. So there's not like a bunch of dark decks running around that you can just super poly away into Starving Venom like back in Orcus format or something. So I feel like this is just very format and deck dependent, but it is very, very big blowout cards, because cards where your opponent can't respond to it are some of the best cards in the game, in my opinion. Finally, we have Zoo King Alpha. Zoo King Alpha is like another Pankratops kind of, but I felt the problem with Zoo King Alpha is that it only bounces monsters back to the hand. And the thing why Pankratops is so good is because it can trade one for one for any card on your opponent's side of the field, while Zoo King Alpha can only bounce monsters. But of course, Zoo King Alpha also does have more benefits than Pankratops to it, because one, you can summon it multiple times. So getting a big body on the board after bouncing one guy, it's also its typing is also pretty important. You can search it off of, I believe, like the Malfi cards, if that's relevant. But Zoo King Alpha, I think, has a lot of potential. It really does, in my opinion. It's just, in a way, it's really another Pankratops, but for some reason, just people aren't playing it, and I guess that's just because you can't really do too much with it right now, because of all the negates that are running around. But eventually, if we're in a format where this can potentially come up, then I would say this is a really, really very, very hidden sleeper card. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. And yeah, let me know what you guys want to see next. But with that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I will see you soon.